The entire money-structured and materialistic-oriented society is a false society. 10 or 15 years from now, our society will go down in history as the lowest development in man. We have the brains, the know-how, the technology, and the feasibility to build an entirely new civilization.
You believe that we teach competition, that it's not bred into someone?
Competition is dangerous, socially offensive, considered right and normal, because you are brought up to that value system. What kind of competition did Jesus have? What kind of competition is there in your body? Suppose your brain said, I'm the most important organ, and the liver said, I am, and I want to go a free enterprise system. You'd rot away in a month.
Hello and welcome back to the Guy Boudreaux Radio Show. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome to the show. Our special guest today is Jacque Fresco and Roxanne Meadows. They are the founders of what is called the Venus Project. And I will read you a quick blurb on their website, which is located at thevenusproject.com. And it states on the website that the Venus Project offers a comprehensive plan for social reclamation in which human beings, technology, and nature will be able to coexist in a long-term, sustainable state of dynamic equilibrium. Yes, that is a mouthful. So, on that note, let's bring in Jacque Fresco and Roxanne Meadows. And if you two could you explain to the listening audience where the idea came from in regards to the Venus Project and where the project is today?
Well, that would be Jacque with how it started, the Venus Project.
Well, it started during the 1929 stock market crash, the Depression in the United States. It started by me observing all the unemployed people that were replaced, and they had no income at that time, and they were in very bad shape. So I looked around, and the department stores had everything people needed in the windows, but the public didn't have the purchasing power to buy the goods and services. That's when I thought there was something wrong with our system. It took that kind of condition to awaken me to those necessities that had to be changed.
He spent a lifetime of searching other systems like communism, socialism. At the time there was technocracy, mankind united, but he didn't find anything that he felt was adequate.
They never gave the solutions to the problems. They talked around everything, but never pointed a way out of the problems. So I worked on a way out of the problems to get rid of the conditions that produce aberrant behavior.
Okay, very interesting. I'll have to admit that when I started doing more research about what you've done, I was looking for. I expected to find more about you in regards to the technology side of it, but as it turns out, you're a very strong social advocate for change as a whole, and have been for quite some time, which is very rare for that generation. Very rare. So my hat's off to you. And even before we get into the Venus Project, maybe share with the listening audience some of your inventions in the 1930s, 40s, etc.
A new aircraft wing structure, where all the spars of the airplane went to the midsection or the maximum camber, and I can control the thickness of the wing by one piston underneath all those spars. So you can take off with a heavy load at the maximum camber, and as you flew along, you reduce your camber, that is the height or thickness of the wing, so you had less air resistance, and you didn't need another plane to do that. Never had the money to patent on anything. I had very little money available, so I couldn't patent things.
Wow. So all of the inventions that came out of your brain never reached a patent office.
Most of them.
Some of them did.
Okay.
A great deal of them. Yeah, most of them didn't, but there were some that did. Other people took out patents, and he sold a lot of things to just keep his lab going.
Okay.
To be working on the things that interest him. He also did 3D TV without glasses. You know about what year that was, in the 30s or 40s?
Yes.
And whatever came out of that?
Nothing. I couldn't. The man that sponsored me was a film producer from Paramount, and he went to see Technicolor, and they said, when you get it finalized with all the bugs out, then call us. He said to them, what the hell's the matter with you? If he had it finalized, we wouldn't see you. We needed more funding to do additional work on it.
Okay. And now, Jacque, tell me a little bit about some of the individuals you've worked with in the past, some of your past colleagues. I believe one of them was Albert Einstein.
No, he wasn't my colleague. He was a man that was well known, and I met him outside of the Paramount Theater. He was, first a woman came out with hair sticking up like Einstein, and I said to my friends, Einstein's sister. I was just kidding. Then Einstein came out. And I said, is it possible to meet with you at Princeton? He said, no, it's not possible. He said, why do you want to meet with me? I said, I have thousands of questions I want to ask you. And he said, well, you have to get a letter from your parents because what I talk about may upset them. So I forged a letter from my parents. I knew that they wouldn't understand that. And he said, okay, I'll see you then. And when we met, the first question I asked him was, do you believe in God? He said, which one?
Very interesting.
Then I asked him, do you believe in truth? He said, what do you mean by truth? I said, that certain things are a certain way. He said, what do you mean by that? You can't get away with words. Give me an example. So I said, well, the watch I'm wearing, the bracelet is smooth. He said, you really believe that, don't you? I said, yes, I do. He said, under a microscope, it would appear very coarse. I said, that's right. I said, is that what it's really like? He said, no. We cannot see things as they really are. We can only see things with a range of our receptors. In other words, he did mention the fact that there are radio waves crossing the room, and we were not sensitive to it. Then I said, well, does that mean that people are unconscious? Yes, he says, they're unconscious of many factors. We can never see anything as it really is. To a dog would look small. To a mouse, a dog would look enormous. They're both telling the truth from their own point of view.
Agreed. Well put. So, Jacque, what were you like as a teenager? I mean, where does I've seen your work. I've seen what comes out of your brain. Where does that come from?
Well, that comes from not being brought up in the academic world. In other words, in the academic world, they freeze your brain. In other words, they give you things that other people did, and there's no question period. You know, when Einstein talked about the speed of light, I said, how can you be sure of that? As light passes another planet, it's curved slightly. And if it's curved slightly, it would lose its velocity. So how can you say that anything is constant? Well, we got into a heavy discussion then, and it didn't go anywhere. I asked Einstein whether he was social at all, whether he cared about the condition of people. He said privately he was a socialist, but they told him if he came to America and he talked about socialism, they'd ship his hide back to Germany. You understand? But they said this is a free country. There's no such thing as a free country. All countries use propaganda to manipulate their people. They talk about freedom. When the Arabs came with many wives to this country, they said you can only come in with one wife. They said, I don't understand that. Where we come, it's normal to have 4 or 5 wives if you can afford it. Well, in other words, if you were brought up in the Arab world, it would be normal for you to expect many wives. But you have no right to superimpose your values on another system.
Well put.
And a lot of people say, give me the good old days. In the good old days, there was slavery. The blacks were taken out of Africa and brought over here to do work for nothing. So how can it be a free country if you had that sort of thing? If you had racial discrimination, that's learned. When a guy says, I'm going to get me a nigger and I'm going to kick his ass, that's what he picks up from the South, being brought up there. It isn't his nature. Children will play with anybody until mother comes over and says, you're a Lutheran, you don't play with that Catholic boy. You understand? Mother means well, but she doesn't know how to handle it.
Now, I've heard your opinion numerous times in regards to religion. What is your opinion in regards to reincarnation?
Zero.
Okay.
I do not accept that.
Okay.
I accept it as wishful thinking.
Okay.
I accept the concept of God as man-made.
Okay.
Because he gets angry, creates floods. This doesn't sound like God. It sounds like some asshole or a jerk.
Okay.
I don't believe man can conceive of God.
So let's do this. Let's jump back to something that's a little closer to Project Venus. How much red tape and bureaucracy have you had to literally, trudge through over the last 60 years?
90%.
Yep, I can only imagine. And how does that affect? I mean, where is the Venus Project now in regards to becoming more mainstream?
Well, it's all over the world now. We've been on a global lecture tour presenting the Venus Project to many different nations, and they all seem to like it very much. And I said, if you don't talk to other people about it, nothing will happen. So I'd always try to get my audience to talk about the Venus Project. It's not a political system. It's a way of life that doesn't include unemployment, war. We have no warships, no armies, no navies, no prisons, and no police. We're interested in the conditions that produce aberrant behavior and getting rid of those conditions. Like race prejudice is learned, and I don't want that to go around. In other words, you have to get rid of the conditions that produce prejudice. It's not inborn. Children play with anybody. They don't say he's black or he's Oriental. They just play with anybody.
No, I would agree.
And we get to work on them and distort their views that they become racist.
Nope, I agree. And it's interesting when I hear you talk about when I hear you articulate yourself in regards to social behavior as it relates back to an individual's culture, because it's all tied in together, whether you want to believe it or not. And I think the biggest problem, as you know, is the fact that, what I've learned over the years is that 2 + 2 is not 4. I see your face, Jacque. I can see your face.
Let you say 4 what?
2 + 2 is 7, unfortunately, because in life, even if you've got something that can change humanity, if it doesn't fit within the scheme of making money, it doesn't and won't flow in the direction of those individuals that need it. The fact that we have the technology that we have today, and the fact that we have people in Africa or anywhere on the planet without something to eat is unthinkable. But it's the bureaucracy that gets in the way of some of these things. And now that we're talking about technology, let's talk about the electric car. Now, there was an electric car, I believe, that was introduced in the late 80s to early 90s that was just that the project was blacklisted, and they crushed all of these electric cars. So at the end of the day, there it is again. It's that bureaucracy. It's that 2 + 2 is 7, whereas they don't want to disrupt the existing infrastructure in regards to the way that things work today. If we could take existing cities like Los Angeles or Seattle and rebuild it the way that it should have been built, that would be great. But that's also wishful thinking.
You can't do it in a monetary system.
Correct.
That is profit. If you make profit, if you spend $10 million developing the oil fields, you don't want an electric car. It would hurt your business. So business is a bad thing, and the money system can corrupt people because you can pay off senators, you can put up money to help them get elected, then they owe you a favor. There's never been a democracy. It's just a word that they give to people to make them believe that they participate in our culture. In our culture, we never were asked whether or not we want the war in Iraq. Nobody ever asked me anyway. They never ask us whether we want to put a man on the moon. Where do you participate? I ask people. They say, well, I don't know. They really don't participate. They think they do.
I've got a question for you. And where do you see things in the next 100 years?
Oh, the next 100 years, if we make it, we may kill each other in nuclear war.
Okay.
I think if somebody doesn't get up and attack the system, not all around it, but the system itself, the monetary system, if they don't attack that, they're doing nothing. Nothing will change.
It really depends on how much information we can get out about this new system that we're talking about, the Venus Project and a resource-based economy, as to whether we might have a chance of making it into a saner future.
For all people, all over the world. I do not envision separate nations. I envision all the people getting together and dividing, becoming one government that takes care of the environment, the oceans, the rivers, do not dump toxic materials in. In other words, all people need the same thing: clean air, clean water, a relevant education, healthy food, and the freedom from monetary system, money, the freedom from money. We have to have it worked out like the public library, where you can access any book, whether you can afford it or not, without any payment of any kind. Next door to the library, we have a camera center where anyone can check out a camera, any kind of camera. They're instructed on how to use it. Next door to that, we have musical instruments. You can check out any kind of instrument. Until you do that, you're going to have trouble in the world. You have to share the resources of the earth with all the other nations. After all, where did we get America from? We stole it from the Indians. They didn't ask us to come over and build whatever you want to build. We took it from them. And somebody said to me, well, give me the good old days. In the good old days, there was slavery, child labor. In the good old days, there was a lot of trouble. They used to kill women in Salem, Massachusetts. They were called witch hunts, and they killed women who thought differently than other women. This has never been a free country. It never was a free country. It's just part of the propaganda you get. All countries are basically corrupt.
Let me ask you a question. In the society that we live in today, you know, where most cultures are raised, maybe on the Western side of things, in Western civilization, we are raised in a roundabout, passive-aggressive way that more is more and that your project is less is more. So I get that. So how do you get the individuals that are raised in their culture to believe that more is more? You know, the person that's defining himself by his or her Maserati, but ultimately is about as empty as a aluminum can. So what would you, I mean, how do you break that thought process down? How do you?
What I did when I was younger, I said, how do you know the system will work that you have in mind? I says, I don't know. I said, I was talking to myself. That's what thinking is. Talking to yourself is nothing mysterious. So I said, why don't you test your system and see if it works? So I joined the Ku Klux Klan, and I dissolved it in a month and a half in Miami area. Then I joined a White Citizens Council. They hate foreigners. They want to ship out all foreigners. So I joined that and dissolved that in 1 month alone. So I found a way of getting to people. When the head of the Klan in Miami said to me, hey, Jacque, you're a smart guy. What do you think of the Klan? I used different language, strategy. I said, it's a great organization, but it doesn't go far enough. That gets his ear. If you attack, you lose it. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you're a straight man, you can't change people. If you come at them in their terms, say it's a great organization, then you don't need to defend anything or defend anybody. All you do is say it doesn't go far enough, and they'll ask you, what do you mean? Then you can talk to them. But if you attack, you'll lose it right away.
Okay. Now, I believe you've also been interviewed at one point in your career, I believe with Larry King, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Who else have you done interviews with in the past?
Oh, many radio.
At that level, at the Larry King level.
Well, they give me too little time. They give me 10 minutes or 7 minutes, and there's nothing you can do in 7 minutes.
I'm going to give you more than 7 minutes today, Jacque.
I know that.
Let's talk about, again, let's segue back into the Venus Project. Let's talk about the infrastructure in regards to the technology side of it all. What will somebody see on the technology side that is different than the atypical, green living space today?
Well, what's different is that American industry is installing more and more automation. You understand that? The automobile companies, the television producers are introducing more and more automation with less and less people. Well, eventually, if they continue that process, which I'm sure they will, people will not have the purchasing power to buy the goods and services if you automate. Unless you automate and tell people you now work 4 hours a day instead of 8 hours a day. Give them more time off. Let automation benefit the lives of everyone, not just those that own industries.
Okay.
You understand that?
Yep.
If you do that, you'll only produce more chaos.
In regards to your question about more is more in this culture and less is more in the resource-based economy, in this culture, you have to continuously sell things. So they have a whole ad agency industry to push things on people, make you feel inadequate, so you will continuously buy the new gadget. If you don't buy, the system falls apart. So we're plundering our planet. We're making things wear out and break down, which is called planned obsolescence, which I'm sure you know about. They make things to break down at a certain time, mostly after the warranty wears out. But in a resource-based economy, which Jacque advocates, everybody has access to all the goods and services, and all the Earth's resources become the common heritage of all the world's people. So if you have a city that belongs to all of you, you don't want to make things that wear out and break down. You want the very best, the very most efficient products available. That means architecture and transportation and medicine and energy systems. You don't want little trinkets that you have to keep buying. And so it's very different in that way. You make the very best products so they'll last. And when things change, when they update the products, then as long as you have enough use out of it, then it'll update quickly.
Okay.
You don't have to go through marketing. You don't have to sell your product better than other products, even if they're not as efficient and they're not as good. If you have a good marketing campaign today and you can outbeat your opponents that are competing with you, it might make it where a better product may not. So there's none of that. There's no advertising. There's no bankers. There's no lawyers. There's no professions that are parasitic, that do nothing. There's no salespeople. There's no insurance agencies. You don't need it when the system is based on resources and money is out of the scenario.
Well put. I mean, you articulated that very well, but it goes back to that culture, or to that individual that is raised in that more is more type of an environment. And it's 2 + 2 is 7. We know what it's going to take to make sure that the world is still here in 100 years, but will we take the necessary steps today to make that happen?
No, we have to learn how to change people, how to turn them around by using strategy rather than logic. People are not logical nor reasonable in this system. They just follow the way they've been brought up, which is very unfortunate.
And the way they're brought up is to support the system that they live under. So the values and their notions of good and bad and right and wrong and recognition, the need for recognition, to buy more things and to have more things, they feel that that's a reinforcement for their self-worth, and it really isn't. In the future, they would be looked upon as being sick in a saner society. So the values would change.
Even your Supreme Court, the judges in the Supreme Court, would be considered criminal and the future of America, because they're judging people and they don't know what the conditions were that shaped that behavior.
You know, people think today that they're born with certain notions, that we are warlike, that our nature is fixed, and it really isn't.
We can raise people to hate anybody, just as Germany did. Germany was a sick society, and if they followed Adolf Hitler, who was not very well read or very well informed, he had a lot of opinions that didn't have any basic structure for them.
Correct. You know, I'm going to add something to what Roxanne was talking about. I well put, Jacque. And that is, you know, we live in a society now. Jacque, I heard you say this in a lecture some time ago, and that was, you know, the current infrastructure in regards to education is set up so that you are working for this passive aggressive organization by default. And when you get that diploma, you're just dropped in there like another bean counter. Well, today's society is set up so that everybody has one thing everybody has something inside of them called insecurity. And I think it's some of that insecurity, or most of that insecurity, comes from trying to fit within that mold that was pre-sculptured. What would you say to somebody that has this void? Because we have these voids that we need to fill. And in order to fill these voids, we have to know that we have purpose. We have to know that our purpose isn't...
Well, it depends on the person and the group that I speak to. If it's a religious group, I say in the Bible it says, thou shalt not kill. It doesn't say you can kill Saturday and Wednesday. It says thou shalt not kill. It also says love your enemy. If a man strikes you, turn the other cheek. That means don't hit him back. It also says judge not, lest you be judged. And everybody does jury duty. They don't know what the hell they believe. They don't understand the Bible. They don't understand the teachings of Christ. God said, thy will be done. Christ said this. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. There's no money in heaven, no private property. There's no more social stratification, as I understand it. So Larry King says, what do you think of Christianity? So I've never met a Christian that behaved that way. So I can't tell you. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. And unfortunately, the one thing most individuals do know about is when their mortgage is due, when their car payment is due,
and when they lose their job.
And lose their home.
And that creates a tremendous amount of insecurity. All your life, you're insecure to have to continue to work, to pay off your bills. You get caught in the system with mortgages and kids and wives and husbands and cars. You know, you're up to debt, up to your eyeballs. And they do the same thing with countries. They keep them in perpetual debt and scarcity.
Even if you have money in the bank, if the banks fail, you can lose that money.
You can save up hundreds of thousands of dollars, in your lifetime, and you get cancer, and you can lose all that money. Like you said, there is no security in this system. So, a lot of people come to us and say that after learning about the Venus Project and a different method of doing things, that we can use our science and technology for the betterment of people and preserving the environment, they tell us that learning about this gives them hope for the first time, because they saw no hope out there. It gives them a platform of looking at the world differently, very differently, other than the competitive means.
I think that's great. And if we go back to the more is more, statement, I think that's that would be the equivalent to a shot of morphine. So you live all of your life thinking that if you own this and you own that you will feel a certain way at the end of the day, and you don't. It's just it's a self-perpetuated thought process that you think to yourself needs to be there in order to feel whole. So I think what you guys are doing is absolutely awesome. Articulating it has got to be a challenge worldwide. It has got to be a challenge because the world is just set up so differently. When you start thinking about the Middle East, or you start thinking about Asia, Africa, different cultures, different thought processes. Did you have a meeting with the UN at all, United Nations?
Not yet.
No.
Is that in the near future?
We don't know.
I would love to address the United Nations, but so far we've had little opportunity to do so. But what amazes me is that I haven't been shot yet.
Do you wear a bulletproof vest?
I don't believe in patchwork.
Right now, obviously, you're living within one of your communities, the Venus Project, correct?
Yes.
Walk me
through. It's not really a community. We came here to Venus, Florida, hence the Venus Project. It used to be called Socio-Cyberneering in like 1976 when I first met Jacque. It was called Socio-Cyberneering, which meant cybernetics and engineering applied to the social system. But that was before the word cyber even became popular. So nobody could pronounce it and nobody could remember it. So we moved here and we changed the name. But anyway, we moved here to experiment with building processes, some of Jacque's designs. So we built 10 buildings here ourselves. I did the cement work, Jacque did the design work. And we do mostly books and videos. A lot of people come and say, why aren't you living off the grid, with some of Jacque's inventions for solar design and energy efficient systems. But we were never funded. We funded ourselves from the very beginning. So we held outside jobs and we had outside businesses to fund it. So we make books and videos here, and we use our funding instead of being self-sufficient to get these ideas out to the public through the books and videos and tours. We hold tours here as well.
So if I'm hearing you right, you have some solar inventions that you still need to have monetized one way or another, or inventions of sorts.
There's hundreds of them.
Yes.
Jacque started designing gadgets and products, just to fund his research in other areas that were more interesting and farther along and more advanced. But he started doing prefabricated house after World War II out of aluminum, so the aluminum factories wouldn't close. He designed medical devices. He designed the first hip prosthesis and the knee prosthesis, but only the wealthy could take advantage of them. The housing project got squelched because of political reasons. He designed aircraft, but they used his more efficient designs to bomb quicker and more efficiently. So he realized it was the whole system that had to be changed. And even if you designed and built one of his houses that was about as hurricane resistant as you could do, or tornado resistant, and have solar and built-in waste disposal and everything else, it doesn't change the world while they're still building bombs. It's really a new social direction and a new value system that has to be introduced. So we use all our funds to try and do that.
Okay.
But we are trying to do a Kickstarter program for a new documentary series that we're doing.
Well, that's awesome. You had mentioned some really interesting things regarding the way some of these structures are built. Hurricane-proof, waste-efficient systems. Talk about that a little bit.
Okay, the houses, most of them are free form. That is, they're curved or dome-shaped. A lot of them are dome-shaped with extensions sticking out of them that are also dome-shaped. A dome can enclose the most area with the least material. That's why we use a dome. And if a person says to me, I suppose I don't want to live in a dome. I says, your brain is in a dome. You've been living in a dome all your life. It's the best system nature has to protect the mind, is to make a dome over the brain. And
we build the houses out of concrete and steel here, so that they're fireproof. They're you don't have to put a tent over them and spray poisons in them, because no termites eat the concrete. They get stronger with age.
Wow, that's incredible.
Environmentalists don't want to cut down the forest, but most of them live in wooden houses.
No, that's true.
It makes sense. I mean, absolutely. What have you invented that could maybe change the way a third world country lives? I mean, let's talk about energy.
Since people own patents, they prevent people from building their things unless they pay them. So your monetary system interferes with the development of all the other countries. Patents. There'll be no patents in the future, but there'll be no hungry people or unemployed or slums or dirty lives. Everyone will get medical care because doctors will not work for money anymore. They'll work for access to resources. That's what people need. They don't need jobs. They keep talking about, if only I had a good job. A job is a dictatorship. When you punch a time clock and go to work, you're under the dictates of that company. They don't tell you that. Every job, there's no job that says to you, what are you interested in? Well, I'm interested in working with children or older people. Then you go to this institute or that institute. But they don't do that. You go to work and you do what they ask you to do. You sell tobacco, cigarettes, which kill people. Tobacco gives you heart disease or cancer. It may take 10 years or 20 years, but it always produces negative effects on the body.
I think
Why do they sell cigarettes then? Because of their profit on the taxation of cigarettes. That's why they sell alcohol and detrimental foods to children. You couldn't buy salami or bologna in the future. You couldn't buy hot dogs if they're detrimental to public health. They would not be available. Is that clear?
I think the most important thing that Jacque really designed, aside from transportation and housing and individual products, is the total social system. So people could progress and take advantage of technology, and new ideas would grow exponentially. But within that social system are total city systems as well. That's important. You can't maintain a society all over the world and have a very high standard of living and continued growth and maintain the cities that we have today. They consume a tremendous amount of energy. They're a waste of energy and resources. So he has designed total city systems that are clean, efficient, and just really beautiful places to live. And this is needed in any underdeveloped country or developed countries.
I think what you guys are doing is absolutely amazing. How much of an effect have you had on the rest of the world?
Every Saturday we have tours here, and people come from all over the world on Saturday at 1 o'clock. And that's when we instruct them on how the Venus Project works.
But we have chapters all over the world. We're having a new website in about a week, and we're kind of starting over in terms of having people be able to sign up all over the world, our global map. And so they'll know where other people are within their community who are interested in the Venus Project as well. But we do have people volunteer all over the world. We have a magazine that people just pick up and do every month, and that's a tremendous amount of work with proofwriters and people who write articles. So we have the Venus Project magazine. We have people who volunteered animation for our documentaries. We have people volunteering and doing videos. So and we have had several documentaries about the Venus Project and Jacque's work, about 5 of them. There are 2 more in the making. We're working on a major motion picture to introduce this in an easier way to the general public, to new people. So it is a huge hurdle, but it is growing as well. The more that this system starts to fall apart, the more people will look for alternative directions. And that's the problem with something like Egypt. They were displeased with what they had for a long time, and they overthrew the leader, but they didn't know what to put in its place. And they're having more trouble than they had before. And it's going to continue that way until they know what to advocate. And the Venus Project really lays out a direction to advocate.
So if you're living within a Venus Project somewhere in the world, whether it's in your neck of the woods or somewhere in Australia, et cetera, and it's a Venus Project, what is the social climate like? Do people believe what they believe? They just coexist in the same space?
No. They are trained. They're shown motion pictures of how nature works, how we relate to nature. We're not separate from nature. We're part of nature. And you have to bring up people to understand if you destroy the oceans and the rivers by dumping toxic materials, you're going to hurt the world. and we're moving in the wrong direction. That's why we're advocating the Venus Project. You can't change the society unless people lose their homes, their jobs. That has to happen first. They cannot hear what I say until they are victims of the culture.
And I have to segue back into a conversation we had a few minutes ago about third world countries and current inventions you may or may not have in regards to making things better in that area of the world. Is that something you guys are looking at doing here, maybe trying to implement one of those patents?
We're not looking to, people have asked us if we could build the homes. We'd be spending all our time building homes. We're not in the home building business. We would want to do a total city system in an underdeveloped country. We definitely would want to do that because they don't just need a home or one product that makes things easier or a way to make water. We would like to introduce the city that would give them all of that.
Okay.
Along with education as well, along different lines.
But all the money systems would fight back, as you understand, and say the system is going to kill incentive, going to kill invention. They'll do everything they can to try to stop us. You must understand that. Don't forget that even scientists work for the corporations. They work for GE, Westinghouse, and GE owns NBC and the broadcasting company. So what the hell, how are you going to get the truth out there?
If you go back to when you first started this big push for social, advocacy, who was somebody that inspired you at an early age to do what you do?
My grandfather.
Tell me about your grandfather.
My grandfather said that people came from all over the world and they brought the printing press, language, mathematics. We owe so much to so many different nations that we no longer uphold any one country. Louis Pasteur was a Frenchman, and maybe if it weren't for him, we'd all be dead. We owe so much to so many people. The Germans gave us a printing press, and it was improved by other countries. And all the wonderful language and music we got from the rest of the world. We had so many contributions by so many different nations. The only way to live is not to uphold patriotism. Einstein used to say patriotism is a disease. It separates people. And we have no patriotism. We have loyalty to the earth and methodology and to all human beings and other forms of life. We take care of all forms of life. We never build a dam without the possibility of fish getting up the dam by going over water ways that lead up to the site of the dam so they can get to the spawning grounds. We just build a dam for electrical power. We don't build a dam with keeping animals in mind, not blocking their path of entry into the world. Animals like to migrate. You can't build a tunnel without putting it up off the ground so animals can migrate.
We would do a positive study and a negative study, negative retroaction of everything that's done. It's not done that much today because it's very directionalized for profit. They don't really care of the side effects, of the poisons they put in your food or the poisons that they dump in the oceans or the toxic waste that they put there. They don't really care because the bottom line is getting money and taking care of the stockholders, not the well-being of people. So it's very different. The aims of the Venus Project are for the well-being of people and the environment, not wealth, property, and power.
All people. All over the world, not some people.
Okay.
And there is no, you can't do that, unfortunately, within the monetary system and the political system that's established to support those who are in power. They just serve the interest of those who are in power, and that means financial power.
If I gave you $1 billion tomorrow, how would you use it?
We'd probably do a movie. We think that's most important to get people have to be introduced to these ideas, and we would start the city. We would start the first city. We would start it as a research and development area and a university. So the products turned out would go to enhance the next city. and the city that's already established.
You know that engineers today design things to wear out and break down. Of course, when they wear out, you have to buy a new one. There used to be one thing in your home that didn't wear out and break down, and you didn't own it. It was a telephone by the telephone company. It was so well made you could drop it on the floor, and it worked all the time.
It was those big black telephones in the past.
The telephones today are junk. They go in no time at all, and you have to buy a new one. That's what they want. They want you to be dependent upon the system. Always buy new clothing, changes in style of the car every year. They can design cars to last 10 years or more, but they don't. They design them to wear out, so you'll have service required.
We haven't talked about how you two met.
Oh, somebody introduced, well, I'll go back to this. Jacque used to give lectures at universities in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. He's been working at this for a long time. And at his home, he used to give lectures three days a week, 3 evenings a week. And somebody introduced me to him through his lectures on tape. And they were more interesting than anything I'd ever heard because he gave solutions to the problems. He didn't just complain about them. And the things he talked about were very different than the way they're talked about in the general public. And I thought it was fascinating. So I went to his lectures in his home and then started taking his drafting lessons or his art lessons. He can teach anyone how to draw. There's nothing inborn or special that you have to do that. And he used to teach people how to draw as well that used to go to his lectures. He used to teach the scientific method behind drawing, the rules behind drawing, so anybody could learn. And then I rented a room in his home and stayed.
Okay, are you two married?
I always say as good as or better than. No, we're not married.
Good as or better than.
Yes.
Less is more.
Who is this guy with a white collar? Says, I pronounce you man and wife. Where did he come from?
You have to pay him.
And then if you don't get along, there's a lawyer. It'll cost you $2,000 to separate. Where the hell did he come from?
I think that's cheap today.
Good point. Well put. It's all part of a self-feeding system, right? One way or another.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Very, very political. You know, when you get married in front of the group, that means you're pledging to this other person, and they know where the children are supposed to come from and who's responsible for them, so the state doesn't have to take care of them. So it's very convenient.
Religion is the same thing. It's an attempt to control people, and it's not a good attempt either. Very primitive people believe that some man somewhere up in the clouds made a man and a woman. And then he made a snake that walked upright. And the snake said, eat of the fruit of knowledge. And they ate that fruit, and he kicked them both out. They're supposed to be all-loving, all-knowing God. He wouldn't kick people out.
You used to give a story a long time ago about the kings who used to have, try to control people, and they couldn't. So the magician came along and did a few magic tricks, and people would get all nervous, and then they'd say, well, when you want anything done, pray to this statue. That would get them off the king's back. And when whatever they were praying for didn't come about, they'd get very mad. So the priest would say, okay, pray to this other statue when you have complaints. You know, so it kind of quiets them down and gets them off the back of the kings.
Extraterrestrials. What do we think? What do we know about extraterrestrials? What's your thought process on extraterrestrials?
Intelligent beings. The proof of that is that they haven't come here.
Okay.
They wouldn't get anywhere.
So your designs, Jacque, have you been approached by a company to purchase and to manufacture some of your designs, your original designs?
Yes, many times in the past. I used to design surgical instruments, furniture, all kinds of things. But I don't do that anymore. He
designed speedboats, the first TV without glasses, as we mentioned.
3D.
3D. He designed hundreds and hundreds of medical devices.
And aviation.
Hip prosthesis. Hip prosthesis, knee prosthesis. Yeah, I worked with the aviation company.
But when you work for an aviation company, everything you think of belongs to them. Did you know that?
Any
So
company.
what is the meaning of individuality? I don't even know what they mean by it. And a psychologist tries to adjust you to fit this system, they have to be phony.
Jacque, do you have children?
No, they're both dead. I had 2 children.
How old were they?
How old were they? You said one died pretty early, about 27, didn't he? And the other one, about 53. She spent the last year and a half here with us. She had cancer, so we took care of her for about the last year and a half. That was about 2009, 2008.
Sorry to hear that.
Jacque's 97, so most of his friends, his early friends, are dead. And
I was going to say 60, 65, Jacque.
97.
97. You look phenomenal.
Thank you.
I want to thank Jacque Fresco and Roxanne Meadows for joining us here at the Guy Boudreaux Radio Show. Roxanne and Jacque, you guys look fabulous. You've got great energy together. I'd love to have you back on the show to talk more about the Venus Project as things start to progress worldwide.
I'd appreciate that a great deal. Thank
It's
you.
a privilege to be on your show.
Well, thank you, sir. It's a privilege to have you guys on my show. Once again, I want to thank the listening audience for tuning into the Guy Boudreaux Radio Show. This is Anything and Everything. For those loyal listeners out there that would like to have a particular topic covered on the Guy Boudreaux Radio Show, reach out to us on our Facebook page or send us a tweet. We have a knack of getting the individuals on the show that we would like to be on the show, regardless of where they live in the world or what they do. So please don't hesitate to reach out. So on that note, I'm going to introduce you to a musician who will close the show out for us. His name is Brother Sal. And no, he is not a preacher, but you will be extremely impressed with his soulful voice box. And I think you will be scrambling to get his music after you hear his soulful tunes. I'm Guy Boudreaux. This is Anything and Everything. Have a blessed week. Good night.
Well, I'm a hard-hearted man with a hard-hearted woman, and I don't know who's wrong or what is right. I hold her hand in the bright of the sunshine, and I'll turn my back in the black of the night. Hearts of stone ain't just gonna break, but loving a girl, that's the chance you must take. I'll be a good-hearted man to my woman. Yes, I will. Now when you choose to love somebody, you gotta give a little more than you give. And if you walk in the way of the wordsmith, you're just traveling on the road to regret. My heart of fire ain't just gonna burn. Strike a match, blow it out to And I don't care who's wrong or what is right. Hold her hand in the bright of the sunshine, and I'll come back home in the black of the night. My heart of stone ain't just gonna break. Loving a woman, that's the chance that I've gotta take. I'll be a good-hearted man to my woman. Yes, I will. I'll be a good